The radio crackled while I was turning the key in the back door of the sheriff's office. "Sheriff Russell," I said. "We've got a missing child," Dispatcher Harlan replied. 8-year-old male. Last seen about 20 minutes ago near the retention basin off Larkham Road. I froze with the key half-turned. "Name?" I asked. "Nolan Rigg didn't come home when he was told." "Neighbor saw him riding a blue bike near the basin." "I'm on my way," I said. "Deputy Bullock is already en route," Harlan added. That got me moving. I locked the door, across the lot, and slid into my cruiser. The engine caught on the first turn. I hit the lights and headed east, past the grain elevator and the closed feed store, out where the houses thin and the fields start. Larkham Road runs straight for about a mile, then dips into a shallow basin where the county dug a retention pond decades ago. It's a functional place, not a pretty one, a low concrete bowl meant to catch runoff when the ditches overflow. Reeds and tall grass ring the pond, 3 storm drains feed into it. A few houses sit back from the road behind long gravel drives. On the far side, by the fence line, there's an old ball field with a bent backstop and half-collapsed dugouts. When I topped the dip, I saw the lights first. Deputy Bernice Bullock had her cruiser parked crosswise on the shoulder, headlights sweeping the grass and concrete lip of the basin. A woman stood in the beams with both hands locked on top of her head. A small blue bicycle lay on its side near the mouth of a culvert. I pulled in behind the cruiser and got out. Bernice was at the front of her unit, turned toward the culvert. She's 5'2", late 40s, maybe 110 pounds. She doesn't fill a room or draw eyes. She just stands still and sees things. I'd worked with her long enough to know I didn't have to ask what she'd already picked up. "Sheriff," Bernice said. "Bike's his. Culvert entrance is open." "Mom's right there," I nodded and walked to the woman in the headlights. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm Sheriff Russell. Is Nolan your son?" "Yes," she said. "He was just outside." "He was right there." She didn't move her hands from her head. "I told him to stay where I could see him," she said. "He was riding his bike back and forth. I went inside to check dinner. When I came back, he was gone." "How long were you inside?" I asked. "I don't know, a few minutes." "What was he wearing?" "Red shirt, gray shorts." "Black shoes." I gave a short nod and stepped aside so Bernice could move in, keep her talking and anchored. I went back to the bike and crouched. The chain was still on the gear. The front wheel was cranked hard to the left, like it had been dropped on the move. One rubber grip was scuffed. The grass around the bike was pressed down in a short track pointing straight at the culvert. The culvert ran under the road into the retention pond. The metal grate that should have covered it had been bent outward years ago. The bolts were rusted and broken. Inside, the concrete sloped down to a narrow ledge above shallow water. After 20 feet, the tunnel curved out of sight. I keyed my radio. "Harlan," I said, "confirm fire and EMS are rolling. I want volunteer fire with lights. Get units from the next township for a perimeter." "Copy," Harlan answered. "Volunteer fire is en route. Additional units notified." Bernice had edged closer to the opening, keeping a few feet back. Her flashlight hung at her side, but her eyes were on the ceiling and walls inside. "There's a maintenance line tied into this system," she said. "Runs under the old ball field. Big enough to walk?" I asked. "Parts of it, kid-sized the whole way." That mattered. If Nolan had gone in on his own, he might not find his way back. Kids panic underground. They don't think about turns. They just keep going until they're lost. An older man came up from one of the nearby houses and stopped when he saw Bernice's stance. "Sir, you need to stay back," she told him, turning just enough to block him. "I live right there," he said, pointing. "Name's Lyle Drum. I saw the boy earlier." I stepped his way. "What did you see?" "He was riding his bike," Drum said, "near the basin." "Anyone with him?" Drum hesitated, then lifted his chin toward the culvert. "I saw a clown," he said. Bernice didn't move. "A clown," I repeated. "Yes, standing near the storm drain, bright colors, white face." "How was he standing?" I asked. "Just standing there," Drum said. "Like he was waiting." I looked past him at the dark concrete mouth of the culvert. My head did what it always does when a witness says something that sounds like it belongs in a story instead of a report. It tried to push it aside so it wouldn't get in the way of the work. I still filed it, a clown by a storm drain. This was Derry. A few minutes later, a kid around 10 years old rolled up and stopped near the edge of the road, straddling his bike, watching the flashing lights. Bernice walked over. "Hey," she said. "Did you know Nolan?" "Yes," the boy said. "Did you see him today?" "Yeah, he rode past me." "Did you see anyone else?" she asked. The kid nodded. "There was a clown." Bernice didn't react. "Where?" she asked. "By the drain," the boy said. He waved. I keyed the radio. Harlan, log multiple witnesses reporting a clown near the storm drain. There was a pause. Logged, he said. Volunteer fire rolled in with floodlights and started planting them along the basin. The area brightened in patches, shadows stretching and breaking as the lights shifted. I went back to my cruiser, pulled a spare flashlight and a roll of barrier tape from the trunk. I clipped the light on my belt and handed Bernice the tape. "Keep people back," I said. She nodded and went a string tape across the gravel access road. I stood at the culvert and looked in. The concrete was damp. The ledge was narrow but workable. The ceiling showed old tide marks and exposed rebar. Water slid along the channel at the bottom, dragging leaves and trash. I keyed the radio once more. "Harlan," I said. "Russell and Bullock are preparing to enter the storm system at the retention basin." "Logged," he answered. I stepped down onto the lip and leaned into the dark. Bernice tied off the tape and came up beside me. "You ready?" I asked. She nodded. "Let's go," I said. I stepped in. She followed close behind. The temperature dropped as soon as we were inside. The smell shifted from wet grass and pond water to concrete, rust, and something older that had soaked into the walls. I took 2 steps and stopped. Daylight didn't reach far. My flashlight cut a clean tunnel through the black, but beyond that, everything stayed flat and blank. "Hold up," I said. Bernice stopped short of my back. I planted my left boot on the ledge and eased my weight onto it. Slick but solid, just wide enough to walk single file if you watched your shoulders. Water moved steadily in the channel below, shallow but constant, carrying bits of debris that clicked softly as they bumped together. I took another step, then another. Each movement echoed back, delayed and thinned, like the tunnel was stretching the sound. I raised my light and ran it along the ceiling. Long stains marked where high water had once run. Rust bled from rebar, dried in place like veins. The ceiling wasn't low, but it was close enough I kept checking it. Bernice's beam tracked higher than mine, skimming the upper curve. Neither of us talked. There was nothing to clarify yet. After 10 steps I stopped and looked back. The entrance already seemed farther away than it should. The rectangle of daylight had shrunk, boxed in by concrete and shadow. I could see the barrier tape stirring in the breeze outside, but it might as well have belonged to another place. I took the roll of barrier tape from my pocket. "Marking entry," I said. Bernice nodded. I tore off a long strip and pressed it to the wall at shoulder height, smoothing it flat so the damp wouldn't peel it away. I added a second strip beneath it, angled toward the exit. Then I stepped back to make sure it was visible from both directions. "Entry marked," I said. "Copy," she answered. I keyed the radio. "Harlan, we're inside. Entry point marked." "Standing and walking." "Copy," Harlan said. "Signal's clear." We moved on. The ledge stayed consistent along the right wall. The water channel widened and deepened until the surface glare hid the bottom. The tunnel eased into a left-hand curve. I slowed and unfolded the paper map, pinning it against my thigh with one hand and my flashlight with the other. "This should be straight," I said. Bernice leaned close enough to see without crowding me. "Map shows no curve." I folded it away. "We're not lost yet." We followed the bend. The tunnel widened just enough for the ceiling to lift and the walls to pull back. A raised maintenance walkway appeared on the left side, above the waterline. Its surface was rough, grooves worn into it by years of boots and carts. The walkway wasn't on the map, neither was the ladder bolted into the wall 20 feet ahead. It went straight up into darkness, rungs rusted but sound, sunk deep into the concrete. No identifying tags, no warning sign. Bernice tipped her light up. "That's not on the plans." "No," I said. I didn't climb it, didn't touch it, I just took note. I handed the chalk from my pocket back to her. "Mark it," I said. She knelt, drew a clear arrow pointing back the way we'd come, then added a second arrow and a short note beside the ladder. While she worked, I watched the water. It still moved, but the flow pattern was wrong. Some places ran toward the basin, others eddied back on themselves before sliding on. I keyed the radio. "Harlan, we're at a widened section." "Maintenance walkway and vertical ladder present, not on the map." A pause. "Repeat last," he said. I repeated it. "Copy," he answered. "Stand by." Bernice glanced at me. "Signal lag." "Yeah," I said. We kept going. The tunnel narrowed again beyond the ladder, forcing us back to a single ledge. The curve straightened out and then forked. One passage continued straight, the other angled down and right, the water there deeper and running faster. I checked the map again. "There shouldn't be a split," I said. I stood there with the folded map in my left hand, light on the junction. Bernice said nothing. She swept her beam first down the right-hand branch, then the left, checking ceiling, water, distance. Mark it, I said. She stepped forward, took out the chalk, and drew an arrow pointing back the way we'd come. She put identical marks at the mouths of both branches, same height, same spacing. When she straightened, you could tell at a glance which way led out. We took the left passage. It narrowed almost immediately. The ceiling dropped just enough to make me feel it without ducking. The ledge thinned, so I had to angle each foot sideways. Water hurried past in the channel, shallow but loud, a constant hiss of motion against concrete. Easy, I said. Bernice stayed a step behind, angling her light higher, tracking the ceiling instead of the floor. We went maybe 20 yards before the tunnel straightened. The sound changed first. The water didn't get louder or quieter, it got hollow. The echo came back stretched, like the walls had opened around it. I lifted my beam. The tunnel had widened again, not as much as back at the walkway, but enough that the walls pushed away and the ceiling climbed. The concrete looked older here. The seams were rougher. The stains ran darker. I took one more step and stopped. Bernice, I said. Yes, she answered. I pointed my light at the right-hand wall about knee-high. Something pale had caught the edge of the beam. Up close, it resolved into a streak of white paint. Thin, dragged, not brushed, not a print. Just a line that started clear and then broke apart like something had smeared through it. I lined in. The paint had sunk into the pores of the concrete. Bernice stepped up beside me and swept her light ahead, glancing across the wall instead of straight on. There's more, she said. 5 feet ahead, another smear. Then another, higher this time, around waist level. I tore off a strip of barrier tape and pressed it to the wall above the first streak. I added a second strip angled back toward the entrance. Paint marker, I said. Got it, she replied. We moved forward, slower now. The paint showed up in intervals, sometimes on the wall, sometimes along the edge of the ledge. Once a faint line traced the ceiling where the curve of concrete arched overhead. I stopped and raised my light. The ceiling here showed more exposed rebar than before, some bent downward, some snapped off flush. Near one twisted bar, a thin trail of white paint ran along the arc, broken and irregular, like something had brushed past it overhead. I didn't comment, we kept going. A few yards later, my beam picked up something else, footprints. They were faint, half filled with water, but the tread was clear when I changed the angle. Small shoes, rubber soles. They ran straight down the center of the passage. I followed them with the light. They ended, not like the kid had turned, not like he'd stumbled or been dragged, just gone, clean concrete beyond. No scuffs, no skid marks, just water sliding past bare floor. Bernice came up beside me. They don't continue, she said. No, I agreed. She swept her beam farther down the passage, both sides than the ceiling. Nothing more to follow. I keyed the radio. Harlan, I said, we've got confirmed child footprints inside. White paint markings present. Tunnel layout does not match county map. Static washed my ear before he came back. Copy, say again on the markings. White paint, I said. Multiple smears, another pause. Copy, signals getting weak. Bernice looked back. The last tape marker was still visible, but it looked farther away than it had any right to be. The tunnel behind us seemed stretched. I turned forward again. My light caught where the passage dipped slightly and opened into deeper shadow. We keep going, I said. Bernice nodded. We moved together. The slope sharpened. The ledge pinched until I had to turn my feet sideways again. The sound of the water shifted to something tighter, like it was being pushed through a smaller space. Up ahead, something moved, fast, scraping. Claws on concrete hard enough to throw sparks of sound. Water splashed against the wall again and closer. Bernice stopped and brought her gun up. I raised a hand. Hold, the noise came again, louder, chittering layered under the scrape, the echoes twisting it into something worse. Then it burst into the light. A knot of raccoons shot out of a side conduit on the left, low and frantic, scrambling over each other in blind panic. One missed the ledge and went into the water, then clawed up again. Another leaped past my knees, brushing my leg. Bernice flinched half a step, then froze when she saw them. Raccoons, she said. They barreled past us into the dark behind, water churning in their wake. For a few seconds the tunnel was full of splashing and chittering, then the sounds faded and the water reclaimed the space. I lowered my hand. Bernice lowered her weapon. False alarm. Yeah, I said. I checked the side channel they'd come from. It was low, tight, angling down and away. Nothing else moved. Bernice stepped forward. I turned to say something to her. My light caught her shoulder in the space behind her. Something stood there, filling the tunnel wall to wall, tall, upright, white face. Red lines running from the corners of its mouth up toward its eyes. Bright colors, puffy shapes where clothes should have been. A clown. For a heartbeat, my hands forgot how to work. The flashlight slipped and banged against the concrete. I caught it just before it hit the water. "Bernice," I started. The clown lunged. It moved faster than it should have. One instant it was still. The next it was on her, mouth wide, teeth flashing as it clamped down on her upper arm. Bernice screamed and slammed back into the wall, feet sliding on the slick ledge. The clown let go at once, spun and bolted past me, limbs pumping, feet slapping water and concrete. It vanished down the tunnel ahead before I got my weapon lined up. I fired at nothing. "Bernice," I said. She was on the ledge, clutching her arm. Blood poured between her fingers and dripped into the channel below. "It bit me," she said. "I know," I said. I dropped to one knee and shoved my gloved hand over the wound. The bite was deep, skin torn, blood coming fast. I keyed the radio. "Harlan, officer injured, static." I tried again, nothing. Bernice's breathing was quick and uneven. Her eyes stayed on the dark ahead. "Look at me," I said. She did. I tore my undershirt loose, folded it tight, and pressed it down over the bite. I wrapped it hard and knotted it until she flinched. "Pressure," I said. She covered it with her other hand. "Can you stand?" I asked. She pushed off the wall, got her feet under her, and steadied. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm okay." I didn't argue. I hit the radio again. Dead air. "That's bad," Bernice said. "Yeah," I replied. She looked back the way we'd come, then forward. "We should go back," I said. She shook her head. "No, Bernice, I want to find the boy," she said. "That thing didn't take him for nothing." I looked at her arm. The bleeding had slowed under the cloth. "You can still shoot?" I asked. "Yes," I nodded. We raised our weapons, flashlight steady, and moved deeper in. After a few steps, she spoke. "What the hell was that?" she asked. "A clown," I said. "What did it look like?" she asked. "Just like a clown," I told her. I didn't say the rest. I didn't mention how the white face wasn't smeared or cracked, but smooth and even, put on with care. I didn't describe the razor-straight red lines running from the corners of its mouth up to its eyes, twin marks too precise to be an accident. I didn't talk about the orange hair, cleanly parted down the middle, flaring out stiff at the sides, unmoving even when the thing moved. I didn't tell her how the costume fit like skin instead of hanging like fabric, ruffled collar, puffed shoulders, colors bright and crisp in a tunnel full of filth. Or how the teeth were sharp but uniform, jammed together behind a smile that didn't change shape, even when it lunged. How the jaw opened just far enough to show the teeth ran farther back than they should. When my light hit it, there hadn't been a beat where I wondered what I was seeing. I knew what it wanted me to think. Pennywise, that clown, the one from it. I swallowed and kept walking. Bernice didn't push. She adjusted her grip on her pistol, stayed just off my shoulder. Our beams overlapped so there were no gaps between. The tunnel dipped again, deeper this time. The water thickened and sped up in the channel, knocking debris together in dull scrapes. The walls pinched in, the ceiling pressed down. I felt the space closing around us. The radio stayed dead. I keyed it once anyway. "Harlan," I said. "Nothing. Still out?" Bernice asked. "Yeah," she nodded and pulled her wounded arm in tight. Blood had soaked through the cloth, darkening it, but it wasn't running freely anymore. We'd gone another 30 yards when I saw the next mark, white paint again. But this time it wasn't a smear on the wall. It was too long, too thin. I raised my light. The ceiling above us lit up, broken streaks of white running along the curve. "It went up there," Bernice said. "Yes," I said. "We didn't talk about how." The tunnel opened into a low chamber where several smaller pipes emptied into the main line. Water poured from two of them in flat sheets, loud enough to bury softer noises. Rust stains streaked the walls beneath each inlet. Something lay near the edge of the flow. I stepped closer and knelt. A shoe, small, black, rubber sole, one lace torn clean through, ends frayed. "That's his," Bernice said. "Yes." I picked it up, turned it once, and set it on the ledge where the water couldn't take it. "We're close," she said. I nodded. That was when the sound came back. Not the frantic skitter from before, something slower. A steady scrape, deliberate, from deeper down the tunnel. Concrete on concrete, moving toward us. I raised my gun and light. Bernice did the same. Water shifted ahead. Bernice's beam held on the mouth of the passage. Mine cut a narrower line beside it. Beyond our cones, the dark swallowed everything. The scrape climbed. The sound shifted up the wall toward the curve of the ceiling. Underneath it, another noise, nails or something like nails, dragging in rhythm. "Rustle," Bernice said quietly. "I hear it." The shape came in pieces. First a hand, pale and glove-like in the beam, fingers splayed as it gripped the wall. Then another, higher, pulling. Then a head slid into view, upside down, clinging to the concrete. The clown crawled out of the dark. It didn't walk, it didn't run. It flowed, using the tunnel like there was no such thing as up or down. Hands and feet dug into the concrete, carrying it up the curve, rolling it onto the ceiling, then dropping it down again without losing speed. The costume was pristine, white ruff, puffy sleeves. Bright colors that didn't belong in a storm drain. The face is what my mind locked onto. White makeup, smooth, red lines climbing from the corners of its mouth straight up to its eyes. Orange hair flaring out on both sides, it looked exactly like the clown from it. The thought landed heavy, like hearing your diagnosis before the doctor finishes talking. It opened its mouth. Too many teeth, sharp and crowded, and the jaw opened wider than a human one should. I fired. The first shot caught its center mass and snapped its torso back into the wall. It didn't fall. It reached higher and kept coming. The second round hit concrete. The third took its shoulder and spun it, but it flowed back into motion, limbs gripping, body realigning. I kept firing. It wouldn't hold still. It moved in short bursts, up, over, down, using the curve of the tunnel to throw off my aim every time I steadied the sight. It dropped from the ceiling and hit the ledge hard, then came at us on all fours, fast enough to send water spraying white around it. I backed a step without taking my eyes off it. My slide locked back on an empty mag. Reloading, I said. The clown sprang again, low and fast. Bernice still hadn't fired. Her gun tracked its head, not its body. When it kicked off the wall and launched itself, arms spread, teeth first, she squeezed the trigger once. Her round took it between the eyes. The clown snapped backward midair like a cord had been jerking it from behind. It sailed over us and smashed into the wall behind with a hard, wet thud. It hit the ledge, slid, and collapsed in a twisted heap. It didn't spasm, didn't try to get back up. Bernice lowered her gun a few inches, still covering it. "Got it," she said. I didn't answer. I stepped toward the body, light pinned to its head, my pistol still up. Blood pooled under it and seeped toward the water channel, dark and thick. The stark white makeup smeared where its face had hit the wall. One side of the orange hair lay flattened. Bernice moved up, favoring her injured arm. The cloth I'd tied around it was soaked through. The bleeding had slowed but hadn't stopped. I took another step, then the body changed. It wasn't subtle. The white face collapsed inward like the bone underneath had turned to mud. The red lines warped and slid, losing their symmetry. The mouth shrank, then stretched again, not opening, just reshaping. The ruffled collar sagged and sank into the neck. The puffed sleeves tightened, then vanished into the arms. The limbs lengthened. Joints pushed backward, then snapped forward. The shoulders ballooned wide, then narrowed, like the form was trying on shapes and rejecting them. "Russell," Bernice said, "I see it." The head elongated. A snout pushed out where the painted nose had been. The skull narrowed, teeth shifted. A deer took shape on the ledge, not a calm deer, its chest hitched once. Antlers shoved out of its skull, growing fast, scraping the ceiling. Its legs kicked once, hooves shrieking on concrete, then went limp. For a heartbeat, its eyes were set like a predator's, forward on its face. Then they slid outward as the bone adjusted. The antlers sank back into the skull as if they were being reeled in. The body shrank, the deer folded in on itself and shrank to the size of a dog. Ribs tightened, spine compressed, fur appeared, then peeled away. The head flickered between shapes, muzzle forming and dissolving, nose stretching and shortening twice in a second. Bernice swallowed. "What the hell is that?" "I think it's a shapeshifter," I said. The word sounded cheap and borrowed, but it was all I had. The thing convulsed again. For a second it looked like something bigger, broad shoulders, heavy chest rising under the skin. I raised my weapon and shot it again. I emptied the magazine into it until the slide locked back, echo after echo slamming the walls. Smoke hung low in the tight air. My ears rang so hard the water went thin and distant. The body shuddered once more, then went slack. I waited. It didn't move. I looked down the tunnel. "Let's find the boy," I said. Bernice's breath was coming tighter. Her good hand stayed pressed on the makeshift bandage. "I'm still walking," she said. "You're still bleeding," I said. We stepped past the place where the thing had fallen and changed. My light swept the walls and ceiling in slow arcs. Bernice's beam overlapped mine, filling in what I couldn't see without turning. The tunnel slid into a broader space. The air cooled and grew heavier with damp. The sound of the water deepened. More channels were feeding into it somewhere out of sight. My radio was still dead. I tried it anyway. "Harlan," I said, static. We walked another 30 yards. A shoe sat on the ledge ahead, tipped on its side. Small, black, rubber sole, lace torn. I picked it up by the heel. The passage opened into a low chamber where 3 smaller pipes met the main channel. Water poured from 2 of them in steady sheets. Rust streaked the concrete beneath each pipe. The ceiling rose a little here. I swept my light around the chamber. Then I saw them. Red balloons floated along the upper curve of the wall and near the ceiling, thin strings hanging down. Some were tied off in clusters. Bernice stopped beside me. What the hell? I didn't answer. I moved the beam past them and found the boy. Nolan lay in the corner of a side tunnel, curled on his side, knees half drawn, one arm tucked under his head like he'd lain down to nap in the wrong place. His red shirt was dark with water. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His face was pale in my light. He didn't move. I crossed to him fast, watching my footing, and knelt, 2 fingers on his neck, pulse. I checked his breathing. Shallow, steady, he's alive, I said. Bernice exhaled hard like she'd been holding it since the ladder. I didn't waste time trying to wake him. I got my hands under his arms and heaved him up and over my shoulder. His head sagged against my back. We did not look at the balloons again. We went. The walk back was quicker, but not careless. I followed every mark we'd left, tape strips, chalk arrows, the higher bits of tape I'd stuck above the damp line. The tunnel felt less wrong in reverse. The bend that shouldn't have been there settled back into an ordinary curve. The split reappeared where the map had said nothing, but it didn't feel stretched. The ladder waited where we'd seen it. Our tape was still there, the white paint was. I noticed when my light passed the wall where the first smear had been. Just bare, stained concrete now, no streak, no trace. I didn't stop. Bernice saw it too. Russell. I saw it, I said. We kept going. The rectangle of daylight at the mouth of the culvert hit my face like a slap when we reached it. Floodlights still lit the grass. Voices carried, boots crunched gravel. Volunteer fire and EMS were right where they belonged. I stepped out and handed Nolan off to the first EMT who reached for him. Bernice climbed out behind me and leaned against the concrete, still holding her arm tight to her chest. They bit you? A paramedic asked her, eyeing the soaked cloth. Yes, she said. They led her to a clear patch of grass and cut away what I'd tied. When they saw the bite, their faces tightened. I crouched beside her while they worked. You know you're still a good shot, I said. She gripped my arm for a second and nodded. We'd known each other a long time. I was glad she'd been the one down there with me. Later that night, after Nolan was stable and Bernice was in a room with her arms stitched and bandaged, I went back in with a full team. We brought better lights, more bodies, and a plan. The tunnel looked normal. The chamber with the pipes looked normal. The corner where Nolan had been lying was empty. No balloons, no white paint, no body. They found the barrier tape. They found our chalk arrows. They found Bernice's blood dried on the ledge. They picked up the spent casings where they'd dropped. They didn't find anything else that made sense. I kept thinking about why it had picked that shape. Pennywise, maybe it had seen the movie. Maybe it had seen a poster through some basement window. I don't know. I went home near dawn, scrubbed the sewer stink off my hands until the skin burned, and then I made a call 2 towns over. Sheriff Lost Works Daggerlin. Every cop in Ohio had heard the stories out of that place. The missing people, the bodies, the thing that came out of Lake Erie, and how a handful of men and a black German shepherd had put it down. I'd never known what to do with those stories until that night. Lost picked up. We talked the way 2 sheriffs do when they're both trying to keep their voices level. I told him there was something here too, something bad. He didn't sound surprised. He didn't laugh. He didn't ask if I'd been drinking. We said we'd get together soon, talk it through. Try to figure out what was happening. I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know if it's just Ohio or if it's everywhere. I do know this, there's something out there that almost got us. It can look like anything, and I don't think it's done.